Welcome to Cinemophile, where we bring you the best in independent, documentary, and foreign films, and we talk to the people who made them. I'm your host, Mike Caspar, and you can find out more about the program by going to cinemophilepod.com. This visionary music documentary traces the turbulent, transcendent life of Gregg Allman, from a childhood ruptured by his father's murder to the soulful emergence that reshaped American music through archival recordings, candid interviews, and electric performances. The film follows Gregg's musical awakening amid the blues. He worshipped the creation of the Allman Brothers with his brother Duane that would birth Southern rock, and the grief that followed Duane's fatal motorcycle accident. It is all here, and there's more than that. It is an overview of one of the great bands of all time, and a remarkable story, not only of the band, but also of his life, Gregg Allman. It's called About Gregg Allman, The Music of My Soul. We're joined today by the co-directors of this wonderful film, and that would be director James Keach, as well as producer Michael Lehman. To both of you, welcome to Cinemophile.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. James Keach, I'll start with you. How did you come to this project about Gregg Allman, The Music of My Soul? How did this come about?
Well, I think Michael can talk a little bit about it because
Okay.
he was the one that started the ball rolling.
There you go. All right, very good. Michael, let's talk about how this got going.
So after Gregg passed, I felt it was time to work on a documentary so that the world and the millions of fans around the world would get to have a better sense of who Gregg Allman was as a person, his relationship with his brother, the incredible songbook that they made as part of the Allman Brothers Band. And I interviewed several directors in the process in the early stages. One fortunate interview / meeting was with James. And at the time that James and I connected, I felt an immediate connection, softness, similar feeling that I had towards Gregg and the Allman Brothers that I sensed he had. And that was based on the fact that the entry point that James talked about with me was talking about the music, brothers. James has an older brother, Stacy. Gregg had an older brother, Duane. In thinking about that and comparing notes to the other directors that I had met along the way, I felt that James was clearly more than capable, based on his reputation and body of work, to interpret this story. And again, with the kindness and respect that I felt towards him, there was no one else to even consider.
Well, James Keach, in terms of, you had just finished your documentary on Linda Ronstadt. Well done. By the way, I've seen the film. Was there anything between these two remarkable artists that you saw as a commonality, or was Gregg Allman's life a completely different book to be explored?
Well, the commonality, I think, was in the case of Linda was some of the trauma that happened to her she was Mexican American and she wasn't the nuns slapped her hand when she tried to speak Spanish when she was a little girl. And so that kind of that early childhood stuff kind of informs. Now you can imagine with Gregg, when I started thinking about early childhood trauma informing the story and the music and the journey of that person. I mean, his dad gets murdered. His brother dies when he's 21. Barry Oakley dies a year later. It's just one thing after another. And yet at the same time, the confusion that must have happened, he's becoming the biggest part of the biggest band in the land. Money is falling all over him, and yet the loss is just enormous. So that conflict, that dichotomy it's fantastic for storytelling. And then on top of it, the fact that I identified with the integration part of the story before, but I grew up in a little town in South Texas, and it was segregated. The black people on one side, the Mexican people on another side, and the white people on another side. And my friends didn't matter what color. We all played football on the same team, and I didn't understand it, and it really upset me. So when I realized that Gregg, but standing up against it down there probably wouldn't have been recommended, at that time in our history. And but Gregg did. And Gregg and the band did stand up against that. And they didn't stand up against it as political. They stood up against it as these are great musicians, these are great human beings, these are my friends. And so I thought that was a fantastic part of the story that I wanted to tell too. And of course, there's JMO. JMO, as Michael will tell you, is JMO was in the band before Gregg was.
They demonstrate who they are by their actions, by the people
Exactly
that they
right.
brought into it. Yeah. For a lot of people who are listening to our conversation, they may know the name, the Allman Brothers, not really that familiar with their music. I don't know that. So let's go back. Let's take a little bit of a dive into what was called Southern rock, whatever the term you'd like to use, Michael, to kind of describe the origin story for the Allman Brothers and their sound.
I think the sound came together honestly based on their roots. You know, Duane and Gregg started playing together in Daytona with some early bands that they had created. Gregg then went off to California and had to stay there for a period of time after his brother came back and ended up going to Muscle Shoals and then towards Jacksonville and had connected with the rest of the band. Gregg was the last one to join, and I think they already had a sound that they were working on. Gregg had a bunch of songs that he had written, and they headed up towards Macon, where Capricorn Studios and Records were based, and the Waldens, and they sort of perfected that sound, which is, you know, a southern rock bluesy sound all to their own at the time.
Yeah, it's characterized in the film as the greatest jam band in the world, and that's what they were. I just remember the Live at Fillmore East, which was, you know, constant on autoplay when I was growing up, and just they had an amazing sound. And you dive into this, James Keach, into the film, the influences, the predominantly Black artist who they were taking their inspiration from in this film, which I wasn't aware of, but it's you can hear it now when you listen to the music, how much it influenced them.
You get Floyd Miles, and then you get Hank Moore, and you get Otis Redding, and then you get Little Anthony and the Imperials, and you get and on and on and on, these were the great influences for Gregg and his singing. He didn't deny it. He constantly paid homage to those
Yeah.
people, and as he should. And they're obviously incredible musicians themselves. So
Yeah, it's great to see that part of it. But what really brings this documentary to another level is exploring the relationship between Duane and Gregg and how they influenced each other. They had competition, as brothers often do, but at the end of the day, they found music as a common interest and they really blossomed together. So to see Duane on the cusp of their massive rise to popularity and recognition to be gone in a second. Michael Lehman had to be, as we see in the film, how traumatic that must have been for all concerned, but particularly for Gregg Allman.
Yep, so traumatic as it's shown in the film. And I guided Gregg's career the last 14 years of his life and spent countless days with him on the road, at his house, etc. And there was not a day that would go by where he would not be talking and thinking about Duane at the house. There were so many photographs of the two of them, of Duane himself, notes from Duane. He was tortured, tormented, deeply wounded by that loss, and at the same time also inspired to continue to go on and create music and to delight bands around the world, not only because he was able to himself, but also I think to honor and show love for his brother.
And the again, what you capture in this film is that voice, the voice
Yeah,
of Gregg Allman. It's amazing. It's an amazing instrument, but also it's not just that he has a good voice that he worked with and made better, but the emotional heft that you could feel when you listen to him. And I go back to Laid Back. I mean, all the Allman Brothers music it's more rock, generally speaking, more propulsive music. But in Laid Back, you see what a remarkable singer he is and was. either one of you want to comment on any of that, that's because I think it really it pulls us in emotionally, and his honesty in the film also. But his voice was amazing.
Just for me, whenever I listen to him, it's like I don't know about you, but I sometimes you can hear somebody hit a note and it
Yeah.
just resonates through your body. That's
Yes.
what happens when Greg sings. He hits one note and it's that blues, and it's coming not from his chest up here. It's not coming from here. It's coming from way down there.
Yeah.
And it's his soul. It's like his soul. And his voice was the window to that. And even when he was in his most dazed days, he would still be, the voice was there. So, as Jackson Browne says, nobody could sing like him. Nobody. And he's one of a kind.
Well, Michael, we see him in his last days, and we see that concert, the series of concerts that were put together, and he, as James was mentioning, Jackson Browne talking about the way he sang these days. It's one of those readings of a song. Let's talk about that because he's amazing in that.
Sure. So yeah, the level of emotion. So I'll share a story. I had called out to Jackson's managers to invite Jackson to come celebrate Gregg's career, and Jackson actually had a vacation planned and declined. And so I then, with Gregg's permission, shared where Gregg was in his life's journey. And once Jackson heard that, he immediately changed his plans and came in to celebrate Gregg. And they hadn't seen each other in person for years. And we were at the Fox Theater in Atlanta. And I remember the moment like it was yesterday. Gregg and I and Cenk were already on site, as a bunch of the artists were, and Jackson arrived in the building and came upstairs to his dressing room and walked past where we were, and the two of them just locked eyes, and really the emotion, the warmth, the hugging, and honestly also the glassing up of the eyes when they saw each other was something. And then during rehearsal and during the performance also, basically both of them wept. They had gone through so much together, and the way Gregg interprets these days, as Jackson said, no one else could do it that way. And it's such a beautiful song. It's one of my favorite songs of Jackson's and Gregg's, the way he interprets it. And it was it was a stunning night, a stunning celebration, and overwhelming sense of emotion that I think 5,000 plus in the Fox Theater felt that night.
Well, the film is called About Gregg Allman, the music of my soul, and there's so much more here. I want to just, as we say goodbye, let people know that Gregg Allman's honesty in the film, his recounting of his life, where he made his mistakes, and he holds himself accountable. That's a beautiful part of this film. That really is the soul of this film. Again, About Gregg Allman, the music of my soul. There'll be a one night only, June 17th presentation of the film. So you can go to.
It's GreggAllmanDocumentary.com.
Thank you.
And we will be in 200 theaters across the country on the 17th. Several theaters have already extended to a week. There'll be a week in New York, a week in LA. Macon will be for a week, and we look forward to sharing the film with everyone.
Of course, Macon, it'll be there a week. Of course it will be. Of course. So thank you so very much for your time. Beautiful film. I love Gregg Allman. It was just a joy to be able to see and hear his story once again. The film is About Gregg Allman, the music of my soul. And we've been speaking with James Keach, the director, as well as the producer and manager and longtime friend of Gregg Allman, Michael Lehman. Be looking for this film. One night only, June 17th, across the country screenings, as well as Michael said, that will be playing in certain cities for a whole week. So check it out. About Gregg Allman, the music of my soul. To both of you, director James Keach and producer Michael Lehman, thank you so much for your time here on Cinemaphile.
Thanks so much.
You have been listening to Cinemaphile with Mike Kaspar, the place where you will hear from the best in independent documentary and foreign filmmakers. Please check out our previous interviews as well as upcoming interviews and special programming by going to cinemaphilepod.com. We are also available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube, searchable under Cinemaphile with Mike Kaspar. Until next time, thank you for listening.